Okay, welcome to Addressing the Need for a Balanced, Holistic, and Academic Curriculum. My name is Christy Johnson, and over here we just have an illustration that perspective changes things. These are both the same exact thing. One looks like a virus and a bacteria from this perspective, and the other one we can see is a beautiful glowing jellyfish. So I hope we can see a different perspective on education today. This was an applied research project for the development of an organizational tool. Our topic was the need for a more holistic curriculum to produce better student outcomes. Our problem statement was that students need a more practical and holistic curriculum to better serve their needs and positively impact schools and society. And then our research question was how might a holistic curriculum be developed to address the interconnected needs of the learner as a whole person without sacrificing academics? This is a big part that's going to come into play later. The methodology was a mixed methods approach of both qualitative and quantitative. We had observations on the qualitative side of a holistic private school, a college trade school program, and I was able to interview 12 educators, 6 from public school, 6 from private school or home schools. And then we had a survey, a single closed ended survey question was released in 3 large teacher Facebook groups that yielded 220 responses. And this shows my process over here. I started with the research literature, went through the interviews, observations, surveys, combined it with my own personal experience, and then through coding and analyzing the data, was able to reach some research conclusions. This is an overview of the research instruments here. Obviously, I can't read through everything here for you, but I can give you a good idea of the script that I used. The questions in the interview, I would ask them to share their thoughts and feelings about a curriculum or content that they loved and why, a curriculum or content that they didn't like and why, how did they feel about standardized testing, describing how they felt about holistic teaching methods, and what were their thoughts about the food and nutrition factor in schools. For the survey, I asked them, what do you consider to be the top 3 most important or fundamental aspects of a student's education? And then they had these closed-ended responses to choose from below. And everything over on this side was all open-ended, and they were allowed to respond with as little or as much as they wanted. This is the last instrument. It was the field study observation guide, and this just kept me on track when I was observing. I wanted to focus on the curriculum and see if there were any holistic teaching strategies that were being used. What was the students' response to the curriculum? Were they engaged? What was the focus or priority in the lesson or classroom? And any other relevant observations noted. This is giving you an idea of what the coding, analyzing, and organizing of the data looked like. I basically took all of the teacher interviews and all of the observation data, put them into graphic representation. There was 19 pages worth of this, and then I assigned different colors to different ideas that kept coming up again and again. What are the most important aspects of education? This was the interesting response that I got back from the survey responses. Interestingly, problem solving and critical thinking skills came in number 1 across the board. And then safety and survival skills came in absolutely last. So I started thinking through this process of, well, we've got to incorporate the most important ones, but what about these that were considered to be the least important? I couldn't just leave these behind, and this over here shows my thought process of not just leaving these out because these are just as important, and that shows this over here. What good would it do for the student, or what would it even matter to excel in traditional math, science, or reading academics if he or she found themselves in a physical health or nutrition crisis, a safety or survival circumstance, and they had no knowledge or skill set preparation to respond to that? Or a social, emotional, or mental health crisis? What would it matter as much if a student could do algebra or read at the top of his or her class if that same student is mentally or emotionally troubled to the point that he or she harms themselves, or another student or the teacher, or spends their instructional time in detention or in trouble with the law, etc.? So I realized that through reasoning through this, that everything needed to be included. All of these aspects were important, and we needed to find a way to address them all. Drawing conclusions. From the literature, early on, I noticed that connection was an idea that came up again and again, that the idea that everything is connected, everything that the student learns and experiences at home, at school, everything that they come into contact with is all connected. So we can't just teach to one aspect of the person. We have to teach and cater to basically the entire student. And then also integration and interdisciplinary teaching came up again and again, and this is a key factor later on in our answer. And then the tricky nutrition factor kept coming up again and again. This was a problem for many educators, homeschool, private school, across the board, public school. Everybody had an issue with the nutrition factor. Problem solving and critical thinking skills should be a priority. This was a theme that came up in the data over and over again. Curriculum should be flexible, engaging, and fun, of course. And this one was one that the responses were very passionate about the dire need for more social emotional learning content to be integrated into the curriculum, not just a poster here and there on the wall or one or two activities or one motivational speaker, but that this social emotional learning and mindset and mental health content needed to be integrated into the curriculum and receive a place of priority, something that should be taught day in and day out. There was also an overwhelmingly negative perception associated with standardized testing, and definitely a need for further research into how to bring this into balance, bring in accountability, but not in the way that it is being done now. And then there was the complex conundrum, once again, of how to approach the nutrition or food factor in education. There were food cost issues. There were issues of food waste. There were issues of students just wanting to eat a certain kind of food and not really wanting the healthier foods. And there was just so many factors going into this problem. Okay, so the answer we have is to create a comprehensive and beneficial smart maps integration tool, which you will see here. And each letter obviously represents something in our pillars of holistic integration. The educators use the organizational tool called Smart Maps to help guide the development and the design of well-rounded, balanced lesson plans or curriculum maps, which are both holistic and academic. So we see that nothing has to be sacrificed. The educators would take the academic standards or state standards, national standards, and then work them into and integrate them with these holistic pillars. And we will see a little bit of what that looks like in the next slide. So this is our sample curriculum map here. We have our curriculum units, our regular standards, and then we're going to be integrating them with these holistic pillars or principles here. So one example I can give you is the nonfiction text features integrated with the altruism, citizenship, and social responsibility. This was done through a novel study, A Long Walk to Water, which is about a young man who is he survives a war-torn country, and then he ends up going back to help his country, and also not just his people, he also helps the people who were warring against his country in very practical ways. And so this is something that the students really get into. It's a powerful story. It's very engaging, and it teaches the nonfiction side of things as well as the altruism and social responsibility side. For researching, the students learn problem and solving critical thinking skills by researching a social problem that they can then present to the class a solution to those problems. There's many others, but we don't have time to share them all. I'm just going to share with you the final S of the Smart Map system. It incorporates student motivation. So the educator creatively works in student motivation, choice, fun, and interest into the projects. So what we were just talking about, the students get to choose the topic of their research project and the way that they'll present it to the class. The students connect deeply to the emotional and treacherous journey of the main character in the class novel. It keeps them on the edge of their seat, invested. And then the volunteering project is fun and interesting. The students actually practice citizenship and social responsibility by volunteering within the school or within the community, which is, of course, it has to be approved by administration. And this also gives them a personal satisfaction. They also have a choice, they get to vote on the volunteer project. So there are many ways that this can be incorporated. So, what about there's only so much time in the day to teach content, and therefore some of the content must be sacrificed? What about educators from all walks of life have too much on their plates as it is? Why add more work? What about aren't students already burned out and overwhelmed with what is already being taught? Well, the resolution is all built into the Smart Map system, and this is done through the use of integration and combining the educational content. Also, the Smart Maps gives the educators a simple tool to help streamline and guide the process. The framework's already there, it saves time and energy. And the holistic aspect of this curriculum mapping tool helps to ensure that students are more willing and intrinsically motivated to learn. So, this allows for more learning to occur within shorter amounts of time. You don't have to beg students to complete their work when they're having fun and they're engaged. They want to actually learn and participate. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the methodology? Well, the mixed methods allowed for the best representation of the data due to the complex nature of the question. The qualitative methods allowed for meaningful insights, and the quantitative was not subject to bias. It was supplemental and supportive, and it was easily made into a graph. Some of the weaknesses were the small sample size, the limited amount of data, and the possible researcher oversight. This would mean that I might have overlooked a part of the smart map systems, maybe something that needed to be incorporated that wasn't. Maybe something needs to be added or combined. The influential factors, definitely the timing. It was the last 2 weeks of the academic school year, so I was denied many observation opportunities, and many teachers were just exhausted with wrapping up the end of the year testing and activities. So a lot of teachers were not willing to respond to even the surveys or the interviews because of the timing. There was also an educator hesitation and leeriness to participate. I theorize that this is possibly due to the walking on eggshells, fear based, or litigious culture that has become the norm within educational workplace, such as cancel culture. And I do have personal experiences with this. I don't know how much I'll be able to discuss due to the timing factor, but basically, I have experienced. Getting in trouble for the most ridiculous things, such as responding to a parent email and just letting them know the things that we were working on in class. And this is something that apparently only admin was supposed to share with parents, that only administrators were supposed to talk about what we were working on in class. Or the time when I got in trouble for showing the movie. Charlotte's Web. After we did the study, the novel study on Charlotte's Web, I was told that I could be sued for not providing enough instructional minutes to the students because they were allowed to watch that movie in class. So I understand that there's a general leeriness or a hesitation for educators to respond to anything for fear of being sued or getting in trouble, which is unfortunate. There are areas for further research. There is definitely the frustrating complex food and nutrition conundrum needs further research. There may need to be more research to update the smart map system. Maybe it needs an adjustment, an addition, or revision. And then there might be further research into these areas, into how the holistic balanced education can help the Sunday scaries phenomenon for teachers, where they actually might look forward to going to work and students might look forward to going to school instead of having the Sunday scaries. And there needs to be further research into how holistic balanced education models handle issues like homework and testing. So, wrapping it up, what would an educator presentation be without an exit ticket? We know that from this presentation that a balanced curriculum is needed, it is achievable, and it is definitely valuable. So, I challenge every viewer or listener to ask yourself, what would be the most valuable educational experience or lesson in your life that you've learned so far? Was it academic? Was it holistic? Or was it both? Thank you for your time.